Have you ever made a decision so bizarre, so reckless, that even you couldn't tell if it was genius or pure madness? That's how I felt the day I handed over a nickel, yes, 5 cents, for a crumbling Victorian mansion that everyone in town whispered was haunted by revenge itself. I wasn't looking for ghosts, though I was looking for answers. The mansion stood at the end of Blackthorn Hill, its windows boarded, its iron gate snarled with vines like something out of a Gothic nightmare. The locals called it the Mercer House, after the family who'd built it more than a century ago. No one had lived there since the last Mercer heir, Jonathan Mercer III, had mysteriously vanished in 1998. Rumors said the property was cursed. Others said it was tied up in some twisted inheritance dispute that no one ever solved. But when the county auction listed it as abandoned estate, minimum bid 5 cents, I didn't hesitate. I needed that house. Because 15 years earlier, something had happened that had destroyed my family, and I wasn't leaving until I learned the truth. The night I arrived, the wind howled like an animal. The trees groaned, and the gravel crunched under my boots as I pushed open the rusted gate. The air smelled of rain and decay. My flashlight beam wavered across a front door so massive it could have belonged to a castle. The key, an old brass skeleton key mailed to me with a property deed, turned in the lock with a metallic groan. Inside, the house exhaled dust and secrets. The foyer was grand once. Twin staircases curling upward, a chandelier dangling from the ceiling like a skeletal spider. But the air was thick, heavy, almost watchful, as if the walls themselves were waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. I just stood there, trying not to shiver, tracing my fingers across the banister's intricate carvings of ivy and serpents. That's when I saw the portrait. It hung above the fireplace, a woman with sharp eyes, a pearl necklace, and a faint, cruel smile. The brass plaque read, Margaret Mercer, 1901 to 1982. Matriarch, and though she'd been dead for decades, I could swear she was smirking right at me. I began exploring room by room. Each space told a story of luxury rotted by neglect, cracked mirrors, toppled furniture, curtains turned to rags. But the deeper I went, the more I noticed something odd. Everything of real value, jewelry boxes, silverware, antiques, was still there. It was as if whoever left had done so in a single, panic moment. I found the library first. Dust-covered ledgers lined the walls. There was an old desk near the window, and on it a family Bible, half-burned. Names were inscribed inside, generations of Mercers, until the entries abruptly stopped in 1998. Right under Jonathan Mercer III was a faint, erased name. I leaned closer, rubbing the page until the indentation revealed itself. Eliza Mercer. My heart froze. That was my mother's name. I didn't have time to process it, because that's when I heard it, the shrill screech of a car outside, brakes grinding on gravel. Then came the voice. "Excuse me, who the hell do you think you are?" I turned toward the front hall just as the front doors burst open. A woman, late 50s, hair sprayed into a rigid helmet of blonde curls, stormed inside, heels stabbing the wood like nails through a coffin. She wore a pearl necklace, too, almost identical to Margaret Mercer's. "I knew it," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "I told the HOA something was wrong. This property belongs to the Mercer family. You can't just buy it like some squatter." "Excuse me," I asked, stunned. "The deed's in my name." "Fake deed," she spat. "Forgery. This is my son's inheritance." "Your son?" I repeated. "Who exactly are you?" Her chest heaved as she straightened her blazer. "Karen Whitmore, chairwoman of the Blackthorn Homeowners Association, and Jonathan Mercer's goddaughter." I nearly laughed. Of course her name was Karen. "You have 5 minutes to leave," she snapped, "before I call the police. You can't just waltz into a historic property, Anne." "I bought it legally," I interrupted, "from the county auction." Karen's eyes flickered, not with surprise, but something darker. "Fear? Guilt? That's impossible," she hissed. "The Mercer estate isn't public property." "Well, maybe it is now," I said, "and I'm not leaving until I find out why my mother's name is in their family Bible." Her expression changed instantly, from fury to confusion, then to something else. Something calculating. Your mother, she said slowly. What's her name? Eliza Mercer. Karen froze. For a long, uncomfortable moment, the only sound was a wind howling through the broken windows. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. That's not possible. Eliza died before you were even born. Then maybe you can explain this. I held up the Bible. Because her name's written right here, erased but still visible. Karen's mask cracked. For the first time, she looked afraid. Then, in a voice like ice, she said, "You have no idea what you've done." That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because every new discovery twisted the knife deeper. In the attic, I found trunks filled with Mercer correspondence. Some letters were addressed to E. Mercer. One in particular caught my eye, a yellowed envelope sealed with dark red wax. Inside, a letter written in looping ink. "Eliza, if you ever read this, know that the truth cannot stay buried. The inheritance they stole from you will find its way back. And when it does, so will vengeance. Jonathan 3. I stared at the signature for a long time. Then I looked back at the portrait of Margaret Mercer and that cool, knowing smirk. What inheritance? What vengeance? And what did Karen Whitmore have to do with it? The next morning, I returned to the library. The light filtered through the cracked windows like thin gold blades. I flipped through the ledgers again, this time checking financial records. Most of them were mundane. Property taxes, servant wages, maintenance logs, until I reached the final entry, written in a shaky hand dated March 4th, 1998. Transfer complete. Whitmore Holdings now primary beneficiary. Whitmore, as in Karen Whitmore. It hit me like a thunderclap. Somehow, the Whitmores had taken control of the Mercer fortune and erased my mother's claim. I barely had time to process it when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Leave the house," a voice whispered, "before she finds out who you really are." My pulse hammered. "Who is this?" I demanded, but the line went dead. I stepped into the hole and froze. There, taped to the inside of the door, was a fresh envelope. I hadn't noticed it before. Someone must have slipped it through the mail slot overnight. My name was written on it in elegant cursive. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed the front of the mansion, but in the picture there were 3 people standing on the porch, a younger version of Karen, a man who looked like Jonathan Mercer III, and a woman who looked exactly like my mother. On the back, written in red ink, "She took everything from us. Don't let her do it again." That was when the lights flickered. One by one, every bulb in the house popped, plunging the holes into shadow. The front door slammed shut. The air grew cold, bitterly cold, and I heard it again, that same low whisper that had followed me since I'd arrived. "Finish it." My breath caught. "Finish what?" The whisper grew louder, angry now, echoing through the walls. "Finish what she started." I bolted for the staircase, the boards creaking underfoot. The shadows twisted, curling like smoke. A door upstairs slammed open, and for a moment I saw a faint figure, a woman in a pearl necklace, standing at the end of the hall. Not Karen, not Margaret. It was my mother. When I blinked, she was gone. I stood trembling, staring at the empty hall, my heart pounding like a drum. And in that moment, I knew this mansion wasn't just a house. It was a weapon. Someone, or something, wanted revenge. And if Karen Whitmore thought this place still belonged to her, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. They say revenge doesn't bring peace, but whoever first said that never met Margaret Mercer, or Karen Whitmore, or me. By sunrise, the mansion felt different, alive, as if it had been waiting years for someone to wake it up, or, more accurately, to finish what had begun in blood. I'd spent the rest of the night combing through the Mercer archives I found in the attic, crumbling ledgers, birth certificates, sealed wills. Every piece hinted at one thing. My mother, Eliza, was Jonathan Mercer III's legitimate heir. Yet somehow the Mercer fortune in the mansion had passed to the Whitmores. Someone had rewritten history. And now, someone wanted me to rewrite it back. I brewed a pot of coffee on an old camping stove I'd brought, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that the walls were listening. The kitchen window overlooked the long, weed-choked driveway, and that's when I saw her. Karen. She was back, her silver SUV idle at the gate, but this time she wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits stepped out behind her, both carrying briefcases. I didn't move. Karen marched toward the porch like she owned it, barking orders into her phone. When she noticed me watching through the cracked window, she smiled, that tight, insincere grin of a woman who just decided to ruin your life in court. Moments later, she was pounding on the front door. "Open up, thief," she shouted. "You had your fun playing ghost hunter, but this charade ends today." I opened the door slowly. "Good morning, Karen. You're up early." "Don't you dare talk down to me," she snapped. "These men are from the county registrar's office. We're here to repossess the property pending investigation. The deed you have is fraudulent." The taller man stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Miss, I'm afraid there's been a—" But before he could finish, a floorboard above us creaked. Loudly. Then another. Karen froze. The men exchanged glances. "Is someone else here?" one asked. I looked straight at her. Not someone living. The chandelier above our heads swayed violently, though the air was still. Dust rained down. Karen jumped back, clutching her pearls. "What did you do?" she cried. "You're desecrating this home with your witchcraft." But I hadn't done anything. Not yet. The house was acting on its own. The taller man turned pale. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said nervously, "perhaps we should—" "Silence," she barked. "This property is ours. My husband's grandfather bought it." "No," I interrupted. "He stole it." Karen's face twisted. "Excuse me." I pulled a folder from my jacket, the one I'd found hidden under a false floorboard in the study at dawn. I tossed it onto the table between us. It landed with a thud. Inside were two documents, the original Mercer will and a forged copy dated 1 week later. The first left everything, the mansion, the land, and the family fortune, to my only child, Eliza Mercer. The second replaced her name with my dear friend, Harold Whitmore. Karen went dead white. "I don't know where you got that," she whispered. But nothing," I said. "Your family falsified a will, erased my mother's existence, and took everything that was hers. Then you covered it up when Jonathan vanished." "Vanished?" Karen scoffed. He left. He wanted nothing to do with." A loud bang cut her off. Every door in the hole slammed shut at once. The lights flickered. The men from the registrar's office bolted for the exit, but the front door refused to open. Karen spun around, wild-eyed. "Stop this. Whatever you're doing, stop it." "I told you," I said quietly. "It's not me." Then, from the top of the staircase, a single picture frame fell, crashing against the hardwood floor. Karen turned toward it, trembling. The frame contained a newspaper clipping from 1998. Local heiress missing. Police suspect foul play at Mercer State. Underneath was a photograph of my mother. By noon, the men had fled, babbling about ghosts and curses. Karen, however, stayed. Maybe she was too proud. Or maybe she realized that if she ran, her family's lives would collapse with her. She stood in the grand hall, gripping her handbag like a shield. You think this is some kind of victory? You can't just waltz in here and claim revenge for something that happened decades ago. "Can't I?" I asked. "You stole a legacy. You made my mother disappear. You think that kind of rot doesn't come back around." She was unstable. Karen shouted, her voice echoing. She tried to burn this place down. Jonathan tried to stop her, but she stopped herself. I stepped closer. "But what, Karen?" Her eyes darted around the room. The house seemed to hold its breath. "She killed him," she said finally. "She killed Jonathan Mercer. She set the fire that night." "That's a lie." "It's the truth," she hissed. "I was there." A chill ran down my spine. "You were there." Karen bit her lip, and for a brief, flickering moment, guilt clouded her expression. He'd discovered the forged will. He was going to expose everything. Harold panicked. There was an argument. A lamp broke, and the fire spread. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Eliza ran back inside to save him. Neither made it out. I could barely breathe. You watched them die. She didn't answer, but the house did. Every light burst at once, glass shattering like a gunshot. The air thickened with the smell of smoke, acrid, bitter, old. A faint orange glow crept along the walls, dancing like phantom fire. Karen screamed. No, no, not again. Flames weren't real, not yet, but the memory was. The house was replaying it. The revenge it had waited a generation for. You should leave, I said softly. Karen backed away. You can't, you wouldn't. Tell me where you buried them. Her lips trembled. W.H. what? Jonathan and Eliza. Where are they? The chandelier above us swayed again, groaning on its chain. Karen stumbled toward the stairs, clutching the railing. Stop, please, I'll tell you. Then do it. Her voice cracked. The garden, behind the mausoleum. As soon as the words left her mouth, the glow faded. The air cleared. The silence that followed was thick and final, like a sigh of relief. The garden was overgrown, a jungle of ivy and thorns. Behind the marble mausoleum, half buried under moss and date, I found 2 small stones with no markings. I knelt beside them. I found you, Mom, I whispered. Both of you. When I turned back toward the house, Karen was gone. Her SUV was still parked outside the gate, but she'd vanished without a trace. At least, that's what I thought, until I smelled smoke. Real smoke this time. I sprinted back inside, and there she was, in the foyer, holding a gas can, her eyes wild with desperation. If I can't have it, she shouted, no one will. Karen, stop. She struck a match. For a heartbeat, I saw the same madness that must have lived in her family for decades. Greed, guilt, fear tangled into something monstrous. Then the match slipped from her hand. Flames roared to life. The fire climbed the staircase, devouring the old like it had been waiting years for the chance. Smoke filled the air. I ran forward, grabbed Karen by the wrist, and yanked her toward the door. But she resisted. It's mine, she screamed. It's my son's. The beam above us cracked. She looked up too late. The chandelier, that cursed skeletal spider of glass, came crashing down. I dove aside. When the smoke cleared, she was gone beneath it. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the Mercer house was a blackened skeleton. The officials called it a tragic accident. They said I was lucky to have survived, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt emptied. Still, when they handed me the recovered documents, the real will, the title deed, and my mother's signet ring, I knew it was finished. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later, as I was packing to leave town, I received a letter, no return address, just a single sheet of old parchment, folded once. In the same looping script I'd seen in the attic, it read, "You restored what was stolen, but revenge is never one-sided. The bloodline runs deeper than you know. J.M." I stared at it for a long time before realizing the ink wasn't black. It was dark brown, dried blood. Outside, a cold wind swept through the ruins of the Mercer estate. And for a moment, just before the sun dipped behind the charred remains, I saw a flicker of movement at the window. A woman, pearls glinting in the dark, smiling. Margaret Mercer. They say revenge doesn't bring peace. But sometimes revenge is peace for the ones who never got their chance to scream. And as I dropped the letter into the fire and watched the blood-brown ink curl into ash, I finally understood what my mother had written all those years ago. The inheritance they stole will find its way back. And when it does, so will vengeance.